very special guest, and she is going to talk to you about the IELTS exam. If you want to study abroad, live abroad, or simply test your English proficiency, you have probably heard about this exam. Today I am speaking with Jessica from All Ears English, and she is going to give you a lot of fantastic tips and strategies and tell you some great ways how you can get a 7 or higher on the IELTS exam. In this first video, you are going to learn about the difference between the academic test and the general test. You will also learn all about how the test is structured and what you can expect on test day. This interview is in English, so be sure to turn on your subtitles if you are watching this on YouTube. And remember, all the resources that are mentioned in this video are found in the description below. Let's get started. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Jessica from All Ears English, and she is the IELTS expert. So those of you who are interested in taking the IELTS exam, you cannot miss this interview. She's going to give us a lot of really great information. So,
I hope
Jessica,
so.
why don't you tell us a little about your background, about yourself, and what you do?
Yeah. Cool. So, well, I was a classroom teacher for a long time, probably like over a decade, mostly in Taiwan. I also taught in Cambodia and spent some time in Spain and Mexico. And then I got my master's, and because of that, I got a whole bunch of new opportunities. So I started writing textbooks and moving in other directions. And then the best opportunity ever came when I got to join the All Ears English podcast. And that grew and grew, and now we have our own offshoot called IELTS Energy. We have an online IELTS course as well, which is incredible, just going amazingly awesome for so many students, and that's called the 3 Keys IELTS Success System. And then we also have a YouTube channel called IELTS Energy, so it keeps me very busy.
No, but I saw your channel today. I didn't know you had
cool.
this YouTube channel. I sent it to all the teachers at our school.
Awesome.
And I said, you guys have to watch all these videos or use them with the students, because they're very short videos, like straight to the point, like really clear, easy to understand, but they're such great tips for people that want to take this exam. And so just for people who don't know anything about the exam, there are 2 different types of IELTS exams. So can you tell us about the 2 types and what profile fits best for each type of exam?
Sure, yeah. So there's an academic IELTS and a general training IELTS. The academic IELTS is for students who want to study in a university, and this could be, at any level, bachelor's, master's, PhD, but for universities in English-speaking countries, most of them do require IELTS scores. TOEFL is like the American version, but fewer universities accept that, but we can get into the differences between the 2 tests later. So the academic is for academic purposes, and then for people looking to immigrate or work abroad, then the general training IELTS is required. So the overall format is exactly the same, right? General and academic, you do the same exact listening exam, because that happens first on test day. And then the reading exam, the question types are the same, so the same strategies apply for both, but the reading on the general is a little bit easier. Okay, so that's the main difference there. And then the writing exam, the only difference is task 1. Academic students have to do this super weird thing where they have to describe numbers on a graph, which can be really overwhelming, because, when I started teaching IELTS, I had no idea how to do task one. I studied languages and applied linguistics. Like I never talked about that. So like that's very unique to IELTS. But general training, it's a little bit easier for task one. It's more fun because they have to write a letter and just like be very creative and invent lots of details. Task two is exactly the same. And what they are graded on is also exactly the same, regardless of general or academic. So what the examiner is looking for is the same for both tests. And then speaking, which is the last part of the exam and often the most stressful for a lot of students, that's exactly the same for general and academic.
Oh, perfect. So if a student was preparing for the general exam and then realized at the last minute, oh my God, I have to take the academic exam, it's okay. Your preparation is still good.
Yeah, totally. Like I said, like the only thing that you really have to prepare differently for is writing task one. That's it. Like basically everything else is the same.
Great. And so a lot of people ask me, should I take IELTS or the TOEFL exam? And how would you answer this question for them?
Well, apart from the fact that I am much biased towards IELTS, I do, like, honestly, even if I weren't an IELTS teacher, I would still recommend taking IELTS. The preparation is more straightforward because the IELTS test makes more sense. Like, on TOEFL reading, for example, or no, let's talk about the writing. So on TOEFL writing, like you're required to, it's not just writing an essay, right? You have to like read something and listen to something and then write about it. So the writing exam isn't just a writing test, it's also a reading and listening test. And it gets sort of convoluted, I think, as far as like how to approach it. So you need a lot more strategies for TOEFL because it's just more complicated than IELTS is. And plus, like on TOEFL, you're talking to a computer, which is not natural. And it can be scary, I guess, facing an IELTS examiner, but at least it's a person. Like at least it's something you're used to doing, like talking to a person instead of to yourself on a computer screen. Like, yeah, it's just, yeah. So I think IELTS is easier to prepare for, and it just makes more sense as far as what you're tested on.
I found the TOEFL to be a lot more like textbook reading. Like it was a little bit drier. So for me, it was a little bit harder to pay attention to. And the speaking, like when you get that prompt and then it's like beep and you have to talk, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Get your heart started and then you have to speak for a minute and then it's like beeps in your ear again, and it just creates a little bit more anxiety around it.
Oh, for sure. It's super stressful. And yeah, like you said, overall, from my experience, the readings on TOEFL are more scientific. They're harder. So, I mean, both tests say it requires no specialist knowledge or whatever, but I feel like TOEFL does because some of those readings are impossible. Like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And reading passage 3 on IELTS is the most difficult one, but I would never put it in the same category as TOEFL as far as like difficulty and like difficulty of access, right? Like being able to understand it. So yeah, for sure. I think TOEFL's harder overall.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a little bit drier, the language that is used. And but it's great that, you know, some people may not have the option. Maybe the university that they want to go to only allows the TOEFL exam, and if that's the case, I guess don't worry, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean that might happen, but honestly, like I guess about 6 or 7 years ago, IELTS made a more of an international push. So since then, I mean, pretty much every university accepts IELTS. It doesn't matter what country it's in. So yeah, for your students looking to study abroad, definitely check the requirements because IELTS should be an option.
Right. No, good to know. That's because I actually just met with a student now who he was pretty certain that the school that he wants to study at only accepts TOEFL, but I'm going to tell him to look into that.
Yeah, just ask.
Okay, so we've got the 4 parts, which one does it start with again? The reading or the listening?
Yeah, listening is always first, and then reading and writing. So that takes place as one big chunk. Like you have just 3 solid hours of testing in the morning, and then most test centers do the speaking exam in the afternoon. But more and more test centers are offering the option of taking the speaking exam on a day, either the week before or the week after. So yeah, ask at the test center, because I know that that's a really long day, having to do all of the sections in one day. That's tough, man. So if you have an option of scheduling your speaking exam on another day, definitely go for it. Like that's a lot, it causes a lot less anxiety, I think.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and there is a lot more fantastic information coming in these next 2 videos, okay? So remember to click here to watch the second video in this 3-part series. In the second video, we are going to talk all about the speaking exam, how it is structured, and what you need to know in order to get a 7 or higher. There are some great tips that even I was very surprised by. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed already. And if you have any further questions, you can always ask Jackie. Bye-bye.